Today we're continuing on with our NHL offseason plan series, and we're analyzing the 15th best team from the NHL's regular season, the Florida Panthers. What do they have for expiring contracts? What trades or free agent signings might they make this offseason? We'll discuss what to expect coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, today we're continuing on with our NHL offseason plan series, where we're analyzing the 15th best team from the NHL regular season, the Florida Panthers. We're going to first recap their season from the one that just ended. We're going to take a look at what do they have for cap space, expiring contracts, what makes sense for them to explore for trade or free agent signings for the coming year. So let's first dive in and take a look at the last regular season here for the Florida Panthers and recap how things went. Now, as you can see, the Panthers finished with a record of 35, 26, and 8 for 78 points. Technically, they qualified for the 24-team NHL playoff format where there was a qualifying round. They did not get past that qualifying round, though, ultimately losing to the New York Islanders, who ended up going on a rather deep playoff run all the way to the Eastern Conference Final. So the Panthers didn't have a great showing in that round. They've kind of been a team in the last couple of years who's been expected to do more, but unfortunately has continued to disappoint here. Now let's take a look at a couple of their team stats from the past season to really analyze how this team did. So as you can see, they scored 215 goals while allowing 217 for a -2 goal differential. Clearly their defense is an area of weakness. They were, certainly could score more as well, but really they needed to cut down on goals against more than anything else, but this team could certainly get more out of their offensive players at the same time. So I really think moving forward, it's a bit of a balancing act between both those to really improve the team. So it's overall a bit of everything in that regard. Now, looking at their special teams, the power play was really strong, 21.3%, 10th overall in the NHL, where the penalty kill was at 78.5, which was 20th best in the NHL. So not terrible, but not great. Could certainly use some improvements here as well. So like I said, the Panthers are a team heavily rumored to be going through a lot of transition here. So let's take a look at what they have for cap space. We're going to take a look at their expiring contracts, RFAs and UFAs, decide which of those players are likely to be returning on new deals and what else they might do when it comes to trades or free agent signings this offseason. So right now, the Panthers actually have a fair bit of cap space, but they do have a lot of players to look after with that. They have $20.96 million in cap space, and they only have 13 players under contract for the coming season. So even though it sounds like they have a lot of space, they have about 9 or 10 players they're going to have to look after with that money, which certainly doesn't leave a ton of money per player. Now, if we take a look at their list of expiring contracts between RFAs and UFAs, they have quite a few, and there's certainly some question marks here on who comes back next year. Now, looking at the contract situation, first up, let's look at the restricted free agents, where they have a fairly long list, and I think there's a reason to believe that a lot of these players will receive a qualifying offer and likely return on a shorter-term contract. You've got Lucas Wallmark, Dryden Hunt, Alexi Sorella, Dominic Tominato, Mackenzie Weegar, Josh Brown, and goaltender Samuel Montembeault. Now, I think, like I said, I think most of these guys, if not all, will receive a qualifying offer and likely get a new contract here with the team. Montembeault at one point was more of a backup goaltender, but we saw the emergence of Chris Driedger kind of come along and play really well to end the season, so he'll certainly have some competition for next season for the full-time backup spot to Sergei Bobrovsky, but we'll see what happens here. But I think all these guys at least get a contract offer. On the UFA front, though, certainly a little bit of a different story. We got some pretty prominent players like Mike Hoffman, Evgeny Dodonov, Eric Howla, Brian Boyle, and Mark Pysyk. Now, there's been a lot of rumors for some time that Hoffman and Dodonov will not return due to the fact that the Panthers would like to cut salary. But of course, as we know, they recently hired a new general manager in Bill Zito, former assistant GM from the Columbus Blue Jackets, and he was quoted in an interview recently as saying that that's news to him, that he was not instructed by Florida ownership during the interview process or during the hiring process that he had to cut salary. But there's been some rumors and reports that teams like Florida and a few others want to trim somewhere around $8 to $10 million off their payroll to kind of reduce what they're paying out due to all the uncertainty here with not being fans in attendance and all the lost revenue. So there is quite a possibility that guys like Hoffman and Dodonov could find themselves on the move here. Now, could they retain Eric Howla or Brian Boyle? It's a possibility, but certainly far from a guarantee. I think Howla probably has one of the better opportunities to re-sign with the Panthers, but even I think there's a pretty decent chance in his case that he very well might find work elsewhere this offseason here as well. So what are the top burning questions and things that Bill Zito really needs to focus on this offseason for the Florida Panthers? Well, for starters, let's go back to the UFAs here. If you don't sign Hoffman and Dadonov, who replaces them? That's the big question mark here. Between the two of them, they scored over 54 goals and had several assists and leading to other goals. So they're a large part of the Panther attack and the Panther offense. If you don't bring them back, who is going to put the points up? Who is going to score those goals for you? You can only get so much out of Barkov and Huberdeau. And there's even a lot of talk right now. Like I said, I know Zito denied it, but we'll see what happens. That they're going to be getting calls on a lot of players, even their top guys like Barkov and Ekblad and Huberdeau, because of all the rumors around the ownership that's been speculating that they want to cut costs down. So we'll see what happens. Doesn't mean they have to make the trades, but certainly could see a significant changeover during this Florida Panthers offseason. But it's certainly unclear. Obviously, with the cap space they have, they could sign guys like Hoffman or Dadonov. But if you take a look at all those RFAs that they need to look after, even if some of them could be in the minors, and some of them could be on pretty cheap contracts, but still, it's not going to leave a ton of space overall. Now, there's been some talk as well. One of the other big burning questions is the blue line. How do they make this defense core better? There's a lot of talk that they want to trade out one of their more significantly paid defensemen. So we're looking at Aaron Ekblad, Keith Yandel, Mike Matheson. Personally, I think a guy like Matheson is a prime trade candidate, but the contract that he has could prove problematic. I mean, he's certainly a player that I think the Florida Panthers have kind of grown a little bit less fond of and would be willing to trade. But I think even for the right move, we could even see them maybe even be willing to trade Aaron Ekblad. But it's going to have to be for a really high-powered player coming back, like a high top-scoring forward or something to that effect. I mean, they have Sergei Bobrovsky between the pipes. He's not going anywhere. He's got another 6 years on the contract at $10 million. Bill Zito's very familiar with him from his time in Columbus, so I think he still has a lot of confidence in him. Is going to give him every opportunity to bounce back. So clearly, they got their goaltending set for right now. They do have a fair bit of solid forwards left. I mean, even after Hoffman and Dadonov. So as much as they do need to make some tweaks to that middle part of the lineup, I think we're going to see some more tweaks if possible on the blue line, because that blue line core was just nowhere near good enough last year. We're looking at all the NHL teams that have enough, of a need for a blue liner. I can certainly see the Panthers not having too difficult of a time moving a guy like Matheson, or possibly really, it could boil down to maybe be Yandel or Ekblad, but I think Matheson would be their first choice for a blue line trade, and they very well could look to bring in a higher powered forward from that. The other big thing in Florida, too, is can we finally get some growth out of their prospects and have some of these prospects take roster spots? I mean, you're looking at players like Owen Tippett and Henrik Borgstrom and Grigory Denisenko. Are they going to be able to come in and they could certainly replace Hoffman and Dadonov? They may not give them the offense they produce right away, but it is something that could possibly happen in the short term and allow them to save money if they want to give them those type of prime roster spots. But certainly we've had a lot of issues with development in Florida. We've had a lot of their prospects really stall out on really getting ahead and getting into the lineup. There's several other guys as well, even like Alexei Heponiemi. Some of these guys very well could end up playing the entire year over in Europe as well, which is certainly going to be interesting once we know for sure exactly when NHL training camps are going to get underway. But I'm not sure that the Florida Panthers are going to be a big-time player in free agency. I can see them making some trades for sure, especially when it comes to shaking up that blue line. But otherwise, I think we're going to see them kind of take some of those UFAs, have them leave, and maybe try to fill them within if possible. I just don't see a scenario where they really go out spending big time. But I guess we'll see what happens. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on what moves the Florida Panthers will make during the 2020 NHL offseason. We're really not too far away from the NHL Draft. We're not too far away from free agency and getting more trades. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are and what you expect from this team moving forward. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and we'll continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.